Previously in the Chaos Galaxy. The war on Bogibooga's home planet Sindius led to military leader Boominator on the planet Barrow to destroy Sindius. Meanwhile, unaware of this, Bogibooga travelled to the far out planet of Palicium and found information on Cranchon, discovering that it had completely terrorised the planet Palicium and was created by damaging the planet's crystal core. With the help of the Bubba race, Bogibooga and his new friend Transponge escape the planet Palicium, crashing through the planet Roka, where they are picked up by a space patrolman who tells them that Sindius has been destroyed. Bogibooga and Transponge now head for the planet Chaos, where Bogibooga wants to find and speak to the leader of the planet Barrow, Humungous Ancient Rock Man, and find out what's really happened to his home planet Sindius. "How are you feeling?" asked Transponge cautiously. The two had been flying for a couple of days. "I don't believe them," said Bogibooga. "I don't believe Barrow would destroy a planet teeming with life. We'll find Humungous Ancient Rock Man on Chaos and set things straight. What if they were right, you know? Why would those patrolmen lie about a planet being destroyed? It's their job to keep the galaxy safe." "I don't know," said Bogibooga, "but I know they're not telling the truth. I have to see it for myself." Bogibooga was in complete denial. The two flew towards Chaos, captivated by its beautiful landscapes and oceans. They flew around looking for an opening to land in, but the planet was covered by such dense forests and steep mountains, there didn't seem to be a spot of land that was free of greenery to land their ship. After circling around for almost a day, the two found an area of forest with giant, bizarre-looking trees in, that seemed to be so big you could fly a ship in between the branches. They slowly drifted down under the canopy, weaving in and out of the branches, and attempted to land their ship. As the ship got lower and lower, less and less light was being let in through the canopy, and by the time they had reached the base of these trees, Bogibooga, Transponge, and the forest was in total darkness. They landed, and they couldn't see a thing. The ground was uneven. Twisted tree roots, some bigger than a man, seemed to make up the entire forest floor, and they couldn't see more than 2 feet in front of them. Transponge and Bogibooga sat in the ship, knowing they'd have to get out into the dark, surrounding jungle to try and get a signal for Humungous Ancient Rock Man's location. The trees creaked eerily, and howls, distant shrieks and animal calls could be heard far away. The two sat still in the ship. "I really don't like this place," said Bogibooga. "It's fine," replied Sponge. "We just need to hop out onto the planet for a second and use this transmitter to send a signal to Rockman." "But I can't see a thing." "What was that?" Bogibooga heard a noise very close by. "I don't know, but there's going to be all sorts of creatures in this forest. That's what forests are like," said Sponge. "Why do I have to do it?" said Bogibooga. "It was your idea to land in this creepy place." "Let's both go." "What was that?" "There's something definitely watching us." They cautiously opened the ship's hatch and stepped onto the ground as quietly as possible. As they climbed out, a twig snapped nearby, and a low rumble could be heard. "I really don't like the sound of that. I just wish I could see. It seems like permanent night in this jungle," said Bogibooga. And as he said that, he saw 3 bright white eyes open a couple of feet in front of his face. They slowly lifted up until they were 10 feet off the ground, and a dozen more sets of eyes opened behind it. Then, as they turned around, even more sets of eyes opened all around Bogibooga and Transponge. Everything stopped. Then, whatever was connected to the eyes let out an ear-piercing shriek. "Back to the ship!" shouted Transponge, and they jumped back into the cockpit. They saw a flash of blue light as they closed the hatch, and whatever the creature was headbutted the ship, rocking it from left to right, nearly tipping it over. "Turn on the headlights!" Another creature's head crashed into the ship from the other side, almost tipping it over the other way. "I can't find any headlights. I don't know what kind of dodgy ship that space patrolman gave us." "Well, do something, anything." The ship continued to rock back and forth from the force of the giant blue creatures. "Start the engine. I can't find the button." Transponge turned around and saw an apple with arms and legs on the back seat of the ship. "What in Omnius is going on?" "Found it." Bogibooga started the engine, and the ship lifted up off the ground. The light from the ship's jets lit up the creatures in a flash of blue. They recoiled as if the light was burning their skin. "I can't see where I'm going," shouted Bogibooga. "Just go straight forward, out of the night jungle," shouted the apple on the back seat. "What is going on?" shouted Transponge. Bogibooga flew the ship forward at full speed, narrowly dodging branches. As he flew, he began to see a light in the distance. He made straight for it. It looked like the edge of the jungle. As they flew faster and faster, they got closer and closer to the light when they just reached the edge of the forest, and then a creature jumped up from below, swiping its tail and hammering the rear of the ship. The back of the ship shattered. Transponge, Bogibooga, and the apple creature were flung from the cockpit. They bounced and landed just out of the edge of the jungle into daylight. They looked back at the forest and saw ginormous, brightly coloured creatures snarling, pacing back and forth and screeching at them, although they seemed unable to come into the light beyond the edge of the forest. "What on Omnius is that place?" asked Bogibooga to the apple who he was now grateful to. "The night jungle, the most terrifying place on Chaos. No one who's ever walked in walks out again. I had to relay an urgent message but got lost and accidentally stumbled in just before you guys showed up. I owe you my life. I am an Aplu, by the way. Who are you guys?" "You don't owe us your life, we owe you ours. But you might be able to help us," said Bogibooga. "We're looking for a giant rock man from Barrow. I'd describe him as being humongous even. Have you seen any creatures from the planet Barrow here?" "That's who I need to give my message to," said Aplu. "He's just a couple miles north from here. I can take you to him." "Wow, that is very convenient for the plot," said Transponge. "We have to go quickly. Humungous Ancient Rock Man can explain everything when we reach it," said Aplu. After a half-hour's walk, the three ended up at a makeshift camp in a clearing around a forest. The clearing had a couple of camp buildings made from metal and wood, as well as a huge setup of transmitters, receivers, satellites, and other technology kit. Around the tech, there were a series of Bob 2699 robotic units, rolling back and forth between satellites and keyboards, typing hard at work. At the back of the clearing, in a dark edge of the forest, Rockman sat still with his eyes shut. The three slowly walked over to him. "Aplu, have you gathered any more alliances with the creatures of the forests?" Humungous Ancient Rockman didn't open his eyes, but he knew exactly what was going on around him. "The Tokataka tribes, the Gomps, and the Taupe families of the Zemelian trees have all agreed to fight with us. I also found these creatures who landed here from Palicium. They say they're looking for you." "Excellent work, my friend. I have also made contact with Talakon for the first time in decades. He has not told me what he has been working on, but he has said he can help fund the ships and transport for the alliances from other planets." This is just a side note, but Talakon is a new character and he's the richest creature in the galaxy. He's an extremely eccentric scientist who made his fortune by pretty much inventing most of the tech on the planet Barrow. I kind of describe him as like an Elon Musk character of the Chaos Galaxy. He's a bit crazy, but a genius, and no one has heard anything from him for decades. He now lives in the most remote and hostile mountain ranges on the planet Barrow, where he works on secret projects, and he hasn't spoken to the outside world for about 20 years. But Humungous Ancient Rock Man continued anyway. Talakon said he knew a time would come when the galaxy needed his return, and that time is fast approaching. Humungous Ancient Rock Man opened his eyes. "Bogibooga, I was afraid you hadn't made it off Palicium. I could not contact you, but it is good to see you." Bogibooga didn't care to know anything about this mysterious Talakon character. "What is going on? You need to give me some answers as to what's happened to my home planet." No creature had ever raised its voice at Humungous Ancient Rock Man before. The Bob 2699 units all slowed to a stop, turned around and looked at the two of them, then quickly continued on with their work on the satellites and control panels. Humungous Ancient Rock Man calmly stood up, looked down to Bogibooga and said, "I can only blame myself. I entrusted the safety of your planet in the hands of Boominator, an evil creature who had no care for it. Sindius has been destroyed." Bogibooga's skin began to darken ever so slightly, harden and warp shape. He didn't say anything. He drifted over to a nearby ship on the research site. "I wouldn't lie to you, Bogibooga," Humungous Ancient Rock Man said as Bogibooga drifted away. "But the information you sent me from Palicium has given us an extreme knowledge about the makeup of our planets. You have helped massively, and if our scientific theories are correct, the creature on Palicium was made by the planet's caused destruction. And we cannot see the surface of what remains of Sindius, but we understand that if the core to the planet has been broken or damaged in any way, the creation of at least one and maybe two of these creatures could happen. Sindius is the most dangerous place in the galaxy you could possibly go right now. We're waiting and gathering aid and soldiers to travel to the planet and end the war. All you do is wait, shouted Bogibooga. You've waited long enough for this planet to destroy itself, you've waited for me to return from Palicium without doing anything to help, and you're willing to wait while these powerful, planet-killing creatures potentially destroy any life left on Sindius. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm going home. I won't stop you, said Humungous Ancient Rock Man, but I will say this. Thank you for everything you have done for the good of the galaxy. I'm sorry I have let you down and couldn't save Sindius, but we will have the troops to avenge it and save what is left of your people soon. Perhaps being millions of years old has made me too patient. Stay safe, my friend, and know that we will be close behind you. Bogibooga's anger had taken over him so much he didn't even turn to look back at Transponge, and he just walked to the nearest ship. Filled with anger, he took off and flew directly to Sindius. Transponge, left on Chaos with Atblue and Humungous Ancient Rock Man, knew that the army Humungous Ancient Rock Man had gathered would have to head straight to Sindius if they were to save Bogibooga. Humungous Ancient Rock Man, moved by Bogibooga's passionate words, agreed. Transponge, Atblue, get into these ships. We have to launch the assault on Sindius now if we are to save it, unless what I fear has come true. Humungous Ancient Rock Man gave a signal for the Bob 2699 units to send out a transmission to all the allied creatures on Chaos, Barrow and Sindius. He got into his ship himself and prepared for battle. Bogibooga was headed to the safest place on the planet he knew, the stronghold of the Utopanon army. If anyone was to protect the remains of Sindius, it was the Utopanons. But when approaching the planet, all he could see was a cloud of smoke and dust. As he entered the field of debris surrounding Sindius, he had to navigate through gigantic pieces of rubble and rocks, and then, as he reached a clearing, he saw it. The remains of Sindius. His biggest fear had come true, and his home planet had suffered a terrible fate. The planet was completely torn in half. But even worse, missiles and debris was being fired at either side and in all directions in a blur of hatred. The casualties must have been catastrophic, and barely a building was left standing on either half of the planet. As he looked into the distance at the fighting, he saw that one side of Sindius seemed to glow with a dark aura, and the other half with a bright light. Bogibooga exploded in rage. As he screamed, the shape of his body hardened, his cloud cells darkened in colour, and he completely transformed. The pain was excruciating as he cried out in anger, witnessing the pain of all the creatures on what was his home planet, now in a state of irreversible destruction. After his body had completely hardened, the pain faded and he felt different. Bogibooga felt drawn to the darker side of the planet, which once terrified him. He turned his ship and flew towards the dark side of what was Sindius.